The next job will be to remove the cylinder head from the engine. Just a quick reminder that the bike is actually stuck. The engine's locked up, so I'm going to take the head off, and then we'll see what the heads of the pistons look like, and if necessary, it looks like we may have to take the barrel off as well. I'll start by first of all just removing these rocker cover caps and some of the hardware as well. It just takes some of these other items away, just to kind of obviously take the spark plugs out, and then start removing the head bolts. There are 10 bolts in total, 2 here. If you can see this, that's the bottom of one of the bolts. There's another one on the other side. There's another single bolt here at the rear of the barrel. There are 2 head bolts here, one at each side of the spark plug. There's the other 2 there. And finally 3 head bolts down here at the front of the top of the head. And this bolt I don't know if you can see it, you see it there right to the left of the picture, that's the last one to undo. So we'll do these first 2 here on the right first. The one on the left, or the center point of the head, will be the last bolt to come off, because that will allow for the head to work against the valve springs and essentially lift the head from the barrel. I've also been soaking these nuts and bolts in penetrating oil for a number of weeks, so hopefully this will be a relatively straightforward exercise. I've also just noticed that crack there as well. I'm not sure how serious that is, but I'll take a look at it when I have the head off. This stud's actually 3/16, whereas the other one was a quarter, and I don't know if you noticed the difference, but the other one was hexagonal, I guess, and this, I see that the pole is actually round, so I think this is a later stud, but I'm not sure. I'll check this against the parts manual. So I hate to have to do this, but I'm going to file down one of my ring spanners, one of my King Dick spanners. It's a 1/4 inch, but it just will not go on that bolt, that nut actually, at the back of the engine. It's just too thick, so I'm going to file it down a little bit. Well, it was a royal pain in the butt, but finally got it to work. I filed down this ring spanner. It's the step here that caused the problems, but that's it loose now. I'll undo the rest of that in the morning, and I did have another spanner anyway, spare, so don't feel too bad about it, but putting it back on is going to be even more of a challenge, so I'll probably just need to do a little bit more work with that wrench, that spanner. Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. And so finally I'm going to remove the head. I may need to twist it round a little bit just to get it outside of the featherbed frame. Yeah, that's tricky. The problem is this engine's already raised in the frame, so the push rods are holding on. I want to be careful I don't damage them. The push rods are not able to go high enough into the cylinder head to clear the top of the barrel. So I'm stuck here a little bit in that the engine's too high in the frame to clear the cylinder head with the push rod still attached, and they're not going to go high enough into the head for it to lift together. Okay, well that wasn't very successful, I'm afraid. The problem is, with this elaborate mounting system, the engine's sitting too high in the frame, and therefore, and also there's that bracket there as well, is impeding the ability to get the head off. And so I'm faced with a problem where there's just simply not enough room for me to get the cylinder head off the engine while it's still in the frame. So what I think I'm going to do is remove these brackets here, so that will allow the engine to drop. I'm going to do it anyway at some point. I mean, the engine's coming out. That will allow the engine to drop, which will allow me to take the cylinder head off. And then I just got a sneak preview of what the barrel looks like as well while I had that head off, and it looks pretty rough actually. I just felt inside the barrel with my fingers and it feels as rusty as anything, so no doubt that's the reason for the engine locked up or seized up, but we'll see. I won't know until I get a little deeper into it. I'm still struggling to understand why there was so much unnecessary hardware on the front of this engine and the frame, when in fact all it is this simple plate here. So we have this bracket here, we have that bracket there as well. A lot of extra hardware that I felt is unnecessary, and it really has changed the orientation of the engine, of course, which causes this clearance problem higher up. But just to give you an example, that's the standard plate there, and you'll see that the tab here and the tab here, they would go there like this. I don't know if you can see that, but what you'll see is the engine sitting probably a good inch, maybe an inch and a half higher than it should be, and it's also too far forward as well. This curvature here goes around the bowl of the crankcase, and if I try and line that up now, you can see how far it's off there. So it will be great just to get this back to a standard configuration. The goal now is to undo as many nuts and bolts as I can safely, so that the engine will, in a sense, pivot forward and I can remove that head. Or I'm actually finding I'm disassembling the engine from the frame now anyway, so we'll see how things go, but I'm just making sure that I do this carefully. I don't want the whole thing to come crashing down. I'm looking at all the you know, the pivot points on the engine and the brackets, just to make sure that I'm tackling it in the right order. I've removed enough nuts and bolts now from the frame and the brackets and the engine pivot points, so that I'm seeing that the engine's beginning to sag a little bit. So I'm just going to shore it up with this contraption here, just to lift the engine a little bit, just to remove some of the remaining nuts and bolts, not all of them, but just enough to allow the engine to drop down a little bit, that will allow me to remove the cylinder head. I'm also conscious that the gearbox and engine are still attached at the primary. That would all have to be removed before I start thinking about removing the engine or the transmission from the frame. Also being careful not to put any undue pressure, well, no pressure at all on the sump plug. I'm not touching it at all. It's just all on the bottom lug of the engine. And I don't know if you saw that, all the holes are beginning to line up again. Look at that one there. Have you seen that? There's a hole that's actually through the end of the bracket. So, but honestly, there was so much hardware holding this engine in, I don't think it was going anywhere. And I'll show you just how much I've taken off it in one of the next clips. The engine's dropped down quite a bit now, and so I've removed a lot of those brackets. So hopefully we've got enough room now with which to remove the cylinder head. Or not. No, it won't go. Nearly. Oh, yeah. Finally. Oh my gosh, look at that. Well, finally got that cylinder head off, and here's what it looks like below. Not too great. So this right hand bore actually doesn't look too bad, but the left hand bore is a different story altogether. I think that's just my penetrating oil that I've had soaking for a few weeks, but I put my finger to the bottom. It goes down quite a way, that's pretty deep, and it's just full of sludge and debris at the bottom of there. Feels like sand. Oh, there's not so much actually, maybe it's just a little bit. It's just in the indentations in the head. It's full though, it's kind of full of like sandy textured stuff. You know, like that, just kind of junk and sludge and dirt. It's rust, I guess, from the inside here. This is rough as goodness knows what. And These look like liners. Or maybe they're just raised here. I thought that the barrels would be it would be bored into the barrel. I didn't realise that there would be sort of liners, so I'll take this gasket off next as well. There we go. Just dirty. Quite dirty, which is a little foreboding for what's inside that crankcase, right? Pushrod cups down there. I can see that these two over here look quite dirty. These ones have got oil in, they look okay, but the chambers are also a little grimy. So this barrel's coming off next. Or I switch gears and start considering bringing the engine out now and just leave this until it's on the bench. I'll show you the head in a minute, but I can tell you I think I know exactly what was causing that left hand pot to be full of fluid and rust and debris, and it's right here. So this is the left hand side exhaust valve, and you can see it's raised up. I'll show you in a second, but there's some debris that's got caught under the valve, or the valve was open or partly open when the bike stopped, and it's allowed moisture in here into the cylinder to cause that rust to occur inside. Here on the other side, you may know that on the right hand side on the bike in the cylinder, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't look too bad actually. In fact, the walls of the bore actually look very good, only right at the very top where it's a little rusty where you normally find it. But I remember now, as I was looking at this cylinder head, if you remember, as we looked inside when I first got the bike, I'm trying to show you where you can see it. Inside there was pretty rusty compared to the other one. And that's another view here. Hopefully you can see it, of the exhaust port, which then came through here. You'll see there's some debris there, and then just generally pretty nasty around there. Not too bad, you know, overall. If it weren't for that rust, it'd look alright, but this side is pretty good. It doesn't look like to be too bad at all. That's this side of the head anyway. Ironically, the valve gear looks to be in really very nice condition, so yeah, all in very nice condition, but no doubt it's going to have to come out as part of a valve job. I thought you might like to see what's going on in that left-hand bore, so I sort of sponged all the fluid out with some kitchen roll and left most of the deposit down in the bottom, and you can see it looks like mud or sand or something. So let's see if you can just give you an idea of the consistency. Yeah, it's a mess in there, so I suspect, well, I'm pretty certain that's the reason for the sticking pistons. But so next job will be to take the barrel off, but actually I'm not sure. I might start taking the engine out of the bike first of all.